bleeding purple and gold. From the heart of Los Angeles, this is the LakersNation.com podcast with your host, Trevor Lane.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. As always, we are powered by CLNS Media and LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers. Well, first and foremost, guys, I am hanging in there right now. I've been battling a cold all weekend. My voice is shot, so apologies if I'm a little bit raspy at this point. But also, that's why, if you guys have been tuning in to the Lakers Nation Facebook page and you've been looking for the post-game show after our last couple of games, there hasn't been one because I have had no voice at all for the past few days. But I was able to get back behind the mic today. And what a day to do that, because the Lakers are already getting involved in trade rumors now. And you know, it's sometimes things just never work out like you planned. So I spent about an hour earlier today recording with Keith Smith. And Keith Smith of Real GM and Yahoo and Celtics blog, and he's amazing at breaking down all the salary cap stuff and everything going on. And one of the things that we talked about was Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and the fact that the Lakers could potentially trade him as early as December 15th, which is coming up. And we got into why December 15th is that date where suddenly the floodgates open and trades can be made and all of that, because that's when players who were signed this last summer are now eligible to be traded, which would include, obviously, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Michael Beasley, JaVale McGee, Rajon Rondo, Lance Stevenson, even LeBron James, right? All of those guys are now eligible to be traded. So we did the whole show talking about that, and you guys are still going to hear that. I'm still going to play that interview for you because it's still very relevant. There's still tons of great info in there, but lo and behold, here it is Sunday evening, and a Woj bomb comes out. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN announces that the Lakers are trying to acquire Phoenix Suns forward Trevor Ariza. That's right, the same Trevor Ariza that has already played for the Lakers, won a championship with LA, hit some really big shots in the playoffs against the Orlando Magic. He was absolutely tremendous. So Trevor Ariza is a guy who they are looking to reacquire, and what would the cost be? According to Wojnarowski, it would be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So Ariza signed for a $15 million deal this last summer, so he is now eligible to be traded coming up on December 15th. Same thing with KCP. Why do the Lakers do this? It seems a little bit, at least from the outside, it seems a little strange. Because when you look at this, you look at what KCP has done. Now, yes, KCP struggled to start the season, but he has come on lately. He has started really picking it up from behind the arc. He started hitting a lot of his threes again, and that's been a big thing for the Lakers. He was really big for them the other night against the Memphis Grizzlies. He had 4 threes, right? So far, for the month of December, KCP is shooting 41% from 3. That's about what he shot after the All-Star break last season. This guy can be a real weapon there. And so that's certainly noteworthy. Are the Lakers in a position really to give up a three-point shooter like that? Now, Ariza, on the other hand, as of right now, he's only shooting 35% from 3 this season. Isn't having that great of a season. He's been okay. So basketball-wise, why do this? Why should the Lakers make this move? Well, for one thing, the Phoenix Suns are terrible. And the Lakers have already seen firsthand with Tyson Chandler that a player, an aging veteran player, may not be producing at a very high level with a team like the Suns because they understand, hey, we're going to lose most nights. We're going to get our teeth kicked in almost every single night. But when they come to a team that's got a chance to win, it can reinvigorate them. It breathes new life into them. Ariza will probably see the same effect if this deal does indeed go down. So Ariza could be a nice wing player for the Lakers. He can shoot from the outside. He's very switchy. He's able to switch on to power forwards. He can switch on to 2s. He can switch on to 3s. He can do a lot of different things defensively, very lanky. So there's a lot to like there. Why else would the Lakers do this? Well, the other reasons go beyond what's happening on the basketball court. See, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, his agent is Rich Paul, who is also the agent of LeBron James. So Kentavious Caldwell-Pope spent all of last season with the Lakers as a starter. But this season, he's been coming off the bench almost every single game. And yes, he's picked up his play lately, but he's on a 1-year expiring deal. So that means that for him, if he wants to really maximize his value next summer and get a long-term contract, which he probably does, he needs to find a starting role somewhere. And so this could be a favor to Rich Paul. with the Lakers finding him a new home, but saying, hey, Rich, look, we can't just let him go. We can't just not get anything in return. We can't just say, okay, KCP, go find a new home somewhere else. We need to get something back. We need to have a competitive team here. And so that's where you go out and you find a veteran like Trevor Ariza who could come in and somewhat replicate the things KCP does, but isn't going to mind coming off the bench because he's not at a point in his career where he's looking for a huge long-term deal on his next contract because he knows that's probably not going to be there. He's 33 years old right now. So you bring in a guy like Ariza that can at least somewhat replace the outside shooting of KCP, and you send KCP to some place where he can ideally win a starting role. So where is that? Well, Woj mentions that there's a third team involved. KCP would not be going to the Phoenix Suns. Not a surprise that Rich Paul wouldn't want KCP going there, but for the Suns, it doesn't make a lot of sense either. The Suns are looking for a young guard and a draft pick in exchange for Ariza. That's what they're hoping to get, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, which is exactly what they should be trying to get because the Phoenix Suns are very much rebuilding. So if the Lakers do go ahead and make this move, they are helping out Rich Paul, doing a favor for one of his clients. And again, the link bringing KCP to the Lakers last year opened up the phone line to Rich Paul, opened up the communication, and played a role in the Lakers landing LeBron James this summer. And let's also not forget that Rich Paul also reps Anthony Davis. These things matter. Who your agent is and what the relationship is like matters. Look what happened with Julius Randle. Look what happened there. His agent, Aaron Mintz, the relationship between him and the Lakers wasn't great. He was D'Angelo Russell's agent as well. Paul George's agent. Obviously, there is something not connecting right there. So the Lakers want to keep this relationship on a good page. They want to keep things going well with Rich Paul. And so you're doing KCP a favor, but you're not hurting your own team either. You're bringing in a solid, dependable veteran like Ariza, who played a really big role last season for the Houston Rockets. In fact, part of the reason why the Rockets are not doing so well this season is because they don't have Trevor Ariza anymore. So this really wouldn't be too big of a step down. I still really like what KCP has been providing this season, at least over the last couple of weeks. I think he's been much more in line with what people were expecting from him. But you know what? Ariza is no slouch. He shot 37% from three last season as a Houston Rocket. You can expect him to get a lot more open looks if he does make his way to the Lakers. Now, I do want to caution everybody, though. Here we are. We are just less than a week away from this date where suddenly the floodgates are going to open and all of these players are available to be traded. Why is this rumor coming out right now? That should be a little bit of a red flag to people. Who is releasing this information and how does it benefit them? Well, it would seem to me like it would make a lot of sense, and this is just me speculating, but it would make a lot of sense for the Suns to release this. Why? Because they want a bidding war for their player. There are a number of teams who would like to have Trevor Ariza. So if you kind of let the information slip out there that, hey, the Lakers are looking at Trevor Ariza, and we've seen this tactic done time and time again. If you attach anyone's name to the Lakers, it blows up in the media, it becomes a big deal. That's just the way it goes because the Lakers have that kind of a following. Then maybe that brings in more interest in Ariza. Maybe they get a better offer. Okay, now, hey, who knows? James Jones, good buddies with LeBron James. Rumor is that's how Tyson Chandler got let go so early. So maybe James Jones, he's running the Phoenix Suns, by the way, GM of the Suns right now. Maybe that relationship is a factor here too. Maybe James Jones is doing LeBron a favor. Maybe the deal is already in place between the Lakers side and the Suns side, and right now they're just looking for that third team, and that's all they need, and they're all good. That could be what's happening here. But there's also the possibility that the Suns and Lakers have just had these discussions, said, hey, we need to bring in a third team, and then the Suns release the information or someone leaks the information in order to try to get the value of Ariza to go up, in order to try to get more teams interested. So that's always a possibility. There's so much time right now between when this trade can actually go down and when this news leaked. And if you throw in a third team, it gets messy. There are lots of things that can get messed up between now and then. So don't assume this is a done deal. Don't start digging your Trevor Ariza jerseys out of the closet just yet because it's not done until it's done. All right. This is something where other teams could still get involved. And this isn't a trade deadline. This is just when the trade window opens for these players. So December 15th doesn't mean it's going to happen that day. The trade deadline is February 7th. So it could be a ways down the line. Now, obviously, Ariza would like the deal to happen sooner rather than later. I'm sure KCP would like to get established in a new home sooner rather than later if he is pushing for this, if Rich Paul is pushing for this on his end as well. So again, for the Lakers, though, if the Ariza deal doesn't happen, I guess the thing to take out of this is that KCP may want to find someplace else to play. And I don't look at that as a negative or a slight to the Lakers at all. I think the reality is that Josh Hart is eating up a lot of the minutes at the 2-guard spot, as he should be. Brandon Ingram is picking up some minutes there when he's healthy as well. He's even starting there. And so the opportunity just isn't there for KCP to start. So why not build a little goodwill, find a new home for him, and hopefully continue to keep the depth that your team has enjoyed so far this season. I think that's where we're at. Hopefully we're going to find out more about this story as we get closer to this. Again, third team that could come in could be just about anybody. Lots of different options there. I've seen some people throwing out the Philadelphia 76ers as a potential destination with Markelle Fultz going to Phoenix. Woj said this could be part of a bigger trade. So there could be even more Lakers involved in it. Potentially. There could be more pieces coming back to LA than just Ariza. We're just kind of getting the skeleton framework right now. And what we know now is that the framework of the deal is Ariza coming to Los Angeles. He's on an expiring deal, so he won't impact the team's cap space moving forward. KCP going to an unnamed team, and then that unnamed team sending some sort of asset. The Suns would like it to be a young guard and a draft pick for their role in this in exchange for getting an expiring contract in KCP. So that's what we're looking at right now. Will this happen? We're just going to have to wait until December 15th to find out. All right, guys, that's as much info as we've got right now. I'll hop back on, of course, if we find out anything else about this. Now, I am going to bring in Keith Smith here. Keith does an amazing job, and he breaks down all the cap implications of this whole situation. Obviously, the Ariza trade wasn't a thing when we recorded this, but he's explaining how this works with the guys who are on deals that they just signed this past summer and how they're trade eligible. He also gets into Kentavious Caldwell-Pope having it's not a no trade clause, but he can veto any trade. And that's something that's important to note too. KCP isn't going to get sent anywhere that he doesn't want to go because he does have a veto right. He can veto any deal. And again, in this conversation with Keith Smith, we're going to get into exactly why. Okay, so here's my interview with Keith Smith. And keep your fingers crossed, guys. Things appear to be heating up on the trade market for your Los Angeles Lakers. We are so thrilled to have Fanatics as today's sponsor. Fanatics is the world's largest collection of officially licensed fan gear from all the league's teams and players you love. They have the best selection, including trusted brands like Nike and Jordan Brand, exclusive designs by Fanatics, and autographed collectibles from today's biggest stars. They also have something really cool called the Jersey Assurance Program. If you buy a player's jersey and that player is traded within 90 days, Fanatics will replace your jersey with another player from your favorite team or your favorite player's jersey with their new team. We're talking all about trades on this podcast, so this is super useful. The NBA features a ton of trades every single year, so the Jersey Assurance Program is the way to know that you won't get stuck with a jersey that you can't really wear anymore because your guy just got traded. They have hundreds of Lakers products, including Nike and Fanatics branded fast break jerseys for LeBron James, which is one that I own myself, and your favorite Lakers players. Join Fanatics Rewards today and earn fan cash on every purchase. You can support our podcast and get free shipping on your order through December 31st by shopping Fanatics at fanatics.com/LakersNation. Again, go check it out, guys. Fanatics.com/LakersNation. Get free shipping. They have a ton of great deals on there. Go check them out. Fanatics.com/LakersNation. Keith, thanks so much for hopping on with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And I guess I should mention also of Real GM and Celtics blog. You're everywhere, Keith.
Yeah, man, you got to stay busy. You know, it's a lot, but I enjoy it, so it's all good.
So we're getting into kind of prime trade season. Not quite yet. Trade deadline's February 7th, so it's not happening yet. But teams are going to be able to start really discussing things a little bit more with a little bit more substance, because we've got a big date in the NBA calendar coming up on December 15th. What's going on there, Keith, and how does that kind of change the trade landscape?
Yeah, so December 15th is when teams can sign guys that they, or trade rather, guys that they signed over the offseason. This is what most teams refer to as the early trade window. I know we've had three kind of, semi-big trades here in the first month or month and a half of the season, but generally we don't have much movement this early on. And what you start seeing is once you're on the 15th, you can start moving those guys that you signed in the offseason because they are now eligible to be traded. So it's going to be something like 75-80% of the free agents, maybe even a little bit more, that signed with teams over the summer can now be moved in deals and trades and those kind of things. So it just opens up possibilities that much more around the NBA. And teams kind of refer to, like I said, this is the early trade season. This goes until about mid-January. And then mid-January all the way to the trade deadline is what they call kind of trade season. And that might actually move up slightly because the trade deadline this year is actually before the All-Star break, and it's February 7th. So we're a little under 2 months away before then. So, something interesting to kind of keep an eye on here is there's a lot of moving pieces and parts that are happening at slightly different times than usual.
Yeah, you've got a really interesting dynamic here in the NBA where a lot of teams will have cap space this next summer, but then you've got a playoff race that seems wide open in the West and the Eastern Conference. But there's got to be teams in both conferences that feel like they can make a push. So do you anticipate this being a busy trade season this year?
That's always tough to know. One thing is we're looking at about half the league having cap space this summer. So what you're going to see is teams they're more likely to want to move on those expiring contracts or those contracts that have partial guarantees or non-guaranteed for next season, which are, in effect, expiring contracts. So we might see some of those move around, but I don't know that we're going to see any big maneuvers. What generally happens, though, is one team that's projected to be a cap space team will usually jump in and they'll snag somebody early who's under contract and make him their free agent signing for the summer. They just got him early. That's kind of what the Pistons did last year with Blake Griffin. They acted early and he really became their offseason acquisition instead of waiting until the summer. And then there's always going to be a team or two, which we might already seen the Cleveland Cavaliers do, who say, well, forget cap space, let's punt on that, and we'll start eating some bad contracts, which helps teams out even more. So it's hard to say if it'll necessarily be busy, but I think we're going to definitely see some action. Just how much we'll see, and I don't know that it's going to necessarily involve any big names.
Now, I don't know that the Lakers are going to be a team that's going to be super aggressive in terms of landing a win now piece. They might be. We've talked about this before. They are positioned to where if for whatever reason, we know they're very confident that Magic Johnson can bring in free agents, and they're looking forward to next summer when they can go talk to guys like Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard and Klay Thompson and all those pieces. But they are also positioned with the expiring contracts where they could make a big move if it presents itself at the trade deadline. And can you explain how that would work with the expirings that they do have to offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've talked about before, as a quick refresher, when they got LeBron James and then did not add a second, max or close to max free agent, they really pivoted pretty quickly. And what they did was smart for their short-term and long-term flexibility. They signed all these guys to one-year contracts, and a couple of them might have raised some eyebrows at the time. $9 million for Rajon Rondo. Who else was offering that? That was said at the time, but it's one of those things where, all right, well, hey, it's a slight overpay, but we got the guy we wanted and we bring him in. So now you've got Rondo for $9 million, Lance Stevenson for roughly $4.4 million, Michael Beasley $3.5 million. You've got McGee on a 1 year minimum expiring deal. Tyson Chandler, neither one of those guys is going to go anywhere. Their value is just too good for what they're signed for. And then you've got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope returning 1 year, $12 million. So they set things up so that if they don't do anything, all those deals expire, they can wipe them off the books and head into the summer with max cap space plus, some more. Or what they can do is they can look to kind of package some of those guys together. I tend to think with the Lakers, it would be more maybe they package a couple guys together to go get somebody who's on an expiring contract who can help them this year but doesn't hinder things down the line. But you never know. If they can find the right deal for the right guy, they might go ahead and trade for that guy now and then look to have him long term. So a lot of interesting things to come here for Los Angeles as they really set things up in a smart way over the summer.
And you mentioned Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, KCP. And he is a guy that when I see Lakers fans online throwing out trade proposals, he is almost always included. And I get it. The Lakers already have a guy in Josh Hart who can do somewhat similar things. They're not the same player by any stretch, but can kind of fill that same kind of role. Plus, he's got a big $12 million expiring. So when it comes to matching salaries in a trade, his salary is really, really useful. But there's a little bit of a complication here. And Keith, you and I talked about this a little bit off the air. Can you fill everybody in on how this works with KCP essentially having the right to veto a trade?
Yeah. So what you want to be understand with him is it's not really a no trade clause. Those are very, very few and far between in the NBA. And off the top of my head, I'm struggling to come up with someone who has one right now outside of Dirk Nowitzki. I believe still has his, because you have to be with a team basically forever and then sign for so long to have a true no trade clause. But what he does have is he has veto power, as you mentioned, it over any trade. And the reason why is whenever a free agent signs a 1-year contract that they will have bird or early bird rights, and Caldwell-Pope will have early bird rights after this season, they lose those if they're traded. So let's say they trade him to the Sacramento Kings. And then with the Kings, he becomes a non-bird free agent. So what that means is he would lose out on the potential to have his bird rights used to give him more money than he would have otherwise. So anytime a guy's on a 1-year contract with bird or early bird rights following it, they have veto power over any trade. We actually famously saw this way back, probably before a lot of people listening time with the Lakers, but Devon George had a deal like this, and he actually killed a trade.
I remember that.
Way back when. Yeah, and people got all like, "What? Why is this guy killing a trade? What's the deal here? This guy's kind of a nobody at the end of the bench." But that's exactly why. And Caldwell-Pope, unless he likes the destination he's going to, or there's kind of one of these wink deals of go and then we'll take care of you later or something like that, he can say, "No, I'm good. I want to stay right here in Los Angeles."
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if something like that happened. Now, I think another angle to all of this too is the fact that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's agent is Rich Paul, who is also LeBron James's agent. So there's that certainly involved here too. How big of a factor is the agents or are the agents on the trade market? Is that a big obstacle? Do you have a lot of agents kind of putting together deals? What role are they going to play in this?
Yeah, well, they're huge. Obviously, I don't know how much they're putting together deals per se, but they're definitely involved in the process. And what you're going to do is, if you're Rob Pelinka, let's say you go out and you find a trade you like that involves KCP. Before you get too far down the line, what you're going to do is you're going to talk to Rich Paul or whoever it is that actually represents KCP through Clutch Sports, right? He would go to them and say, "Hey, what's the likelihood he'd be okay with going to, let's just keep using the Kings, to the Kings in a trade? Would he be okay with that? Is that something we can make happen here?" And then he'll move on to really start hammering out the details of the trade. Because the last thing you want to do is get all the way there and then have KCP say, "Nah, I'm good. I'm not. I exercising my veto here." And it's important to note too, this isn't a one-time veto. It's not like you can say no once and then it goes away. He can say no every single time up until his contract expires at the end of this season. So that's something you need to keep in mind. As far as though his situation, it was a spot last year where he made a lot of money, and a lot of people were like, "Why did the Lakers sign him to such a big contract?" Well, look where it got them this year. It helped land them LeBron James. What it does is it kind of allows them to start building that relationship with Rich Paul and the agent. And then again, people were like, "Well, why did he get $12 million?" Well, that's almost kind of his facilitation fee is what I like to call that.
That's a good one. I like that
for helping get the guy there, the big guy there, at the end of the day. So I would like to believe that because of his agency and, he's really a bench guy now. He's, somewhere between the, second and third option, on the depth chart, really, at that 2-3 wing position, probably, second or third off the bench is what I'm meaning to say there. So that, starts to become a, situation where I would like to believe he might say, hey, I can do this. And it's one of those, people like to, throw out the very dramatic, well, LeBron and his guys, they'll drive him out to the edge of the pier and dump him in the water kind of thing. I don't think we're going to get quite that far, for KCP, but there could be some subtle suggestions that go on there of, hey, if you want to continue to be represented here, let's make it happen. But this is what happens when you sign these guys to these 1-year contracts with bird or early bird rights. You give them this power, and it's something that the Lakers will have to work around, but I don't think it's impossible to work around.
Now, I think this is another distinction we need to make. KCP gets this because he was with the Lakers last season, whereas a guy like JaVale McGee would not.
Correct. Yeah. McGee, Rondo, Beasley, any one of those guys. They are non-bird free agents on 1-year contracts, so they don't have this power to approve any kind of deal. They basically have to just say, all right, you want to send me somewhere, I got to go. There's nothing they can do about it. It would just be done. So that is a great distinction to make.
So KCP himself can veto a trade. Now, whether or not he'll do that, I guess it would depend on where he's going or if the Lakers even want to trade him. He's been shooting a lot better lately. Obviously, the relationship with the agent is important, especially when we've heard that, the Lakers are shockingly one of the teams interested in Anthony Davis. And realistically, that list is probably 29 teams, right? That would love to trade for Anthony Davis. But his agent has just changed to be Rich Paul as well. So even more reason why the Lakers want to keep that relationship solid. So before we just go throw KCP into these trade rumors, it really has to, or these hypothetical trades, we really have to figure out, what does the agent think about that? What's the relationship like? Are they helping KCP, sending him to a place where it's going to allow him to get a better deal next summer? Or is it something that's going to hinder his career? Because if you do something like that, you could be, shooting yourself in the foot by burning bridges. And that's kind of part of what goes on behind the scenes. And it's the game within the game of the NBA.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one thing that's important to note here, too, with KCP is he made about $17.7 million last year. So you combine those two together, that's $30 million. Now, what you're going to have happen, let's, kind of, without getting Lakers fans too excited, if you're driving, maybe pull over here and don't, go too crazy.
Deep breaths, everybody. Deep breaths. Right?
So if, let's say they did make a trade for Anthony Davis, well, that's going to gut the roster by a decent amount, just because you're going to have to send a bunch of the young talent out, whether that be, Ingram, Kuzma, Ball, Hart, some combination of those guys is going to have to go in that trade to satisfy the Pelicans. So then what you're looking at is, all right, well, then we got KCP coming back as a $12 million guy with early bird rights. Well, now you're probably taking yourself out of being a big cap space team because you made that's how you're going to use the bulk of your cap space. And what you could do there is say, hey, KCP, you want to come back for $4 million? And what that really starts to look like is a 3-year, $34 million contract, which when you look at KCP and his talent and his role, that's a lot more palatable than, saying $30 million over the last 2 seasons. So it's kind of playing the long game here. You got to go back to look at what did he get before, kind of project it out a little bit forward if, where things could happen for him, as you put it all together, because this is a spot where the Lakers, not to beat a dead horse here, but they've got so much flexibility set up both for the rest of the season and heading into the off season. And KCP is a big part of that.
And of course, this is part of why they made the decision to allow Julius Randle to go ahead and walk to New Orleans, is because he wanted that second year to be guaranteed, and the Lakers wanted to have as much flexibility as possible. Now, you guys know, have been listening, I didn't agree with that. I would have rather seen them hang on to Randle, but they made that decision so that they could have this benefit. And who knows, it may pay off here depending on what they do. We're going to take a quick break to talk about Simple Contacts. If you wear contact lenses and find yourself dreading that annual appointment to renew your prescription, then you're going to love Simple Contacts. It's a great new company that makes this annoying process very, very simple. Simple Contacts lets you renew your expired contact lens prescription and reorder your brand of lenses from your phone or computer in minutes. Simple Contacts brings the doctor's office to wherever you are whenever you need it. You can take the Simple Contacts vision test online in 5 minutes. A real doctor reviews it and renews your prescription. You save time, save money, and save yourself a headache. And if you have an unexpired prescription, just upload a photo of it or your doctor's info and order your lenses in minutes for a great price. They do all the hard work for you. This is vision care for the 21st century. Simple Contacts offers every brand of lenses and their prices are unbeatable. The prescription is just $20. They have some of the best prices on contacts and shipping is free. I've got a friend of mine, I don't wear contact lenses myself, but one of my buddies used Simple Contacts, absolutely loved it, couldn't believe how simple it really, really was. And best of all, my listeners get $20 off their first Simple Contacts order. To save $20 on your lenses, just go to simplecontacts.com/LakersNation20 or enter the code LakersNation20 at checkout. I want to mention this isn't a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. You still need those occasionally, but it is the most convenient way to renew a prescription and reorder your contacts if your vision hasn't changed. Again, check out Simple Contacts and get $20 off by going to simplecontacts.com/LakersNation20 or just enter the code LakersNation20 at checkout. Give it a try. Keith, you mentioned, and I know we don't want to get fans too excited or anything, but you mentioned that if a trade for Anthony Davis was to materialize, and personally, I think it wouldn't happen until next summer, and only if Davis turns down a Supermax deal. But if the Lakers had to push all their chips into the center of the table in order to get Anthony Davis, so we're talking Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, whatever other pieces, Kyle Kuzma, do you do it? Hypothetically, if Magic Johnson comes to you and says, Keith, what do I do? Is that a trade you make?
Yeah, 100%. It's Anthony Davis. This guy is, he's in the top, I don't know what, 3, 5. If you go any lower than 5, let's have a really long discussion about who the top 5 are ahead of this guy in the NBA. He really seems to be past the health issues. Now he gets nicked up now and again, but he's not missing 30, 40 games a season. Might be more 5 to 10, which at this point, kind of which superstar doesn't miss 5 to 10 games? Whether it's to they slightly roll an ankle and then they hold them out a night just to really make sure they're okay. But it's Anthony Davis, and the other nice thing too is what that gives you is now you're going to be really, really good for the next few seasons. He's a cyborg, but at some point I'm projecting LeBron James slows down. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's well after his son is here. So
that's right. You got to have both of them on the same team, right?
That's right. And maybe LeBron's still in the MVP chase at that point too, which would be completely unprecedented. Yeah. But let's say he, but at least for the next few years, I expect him to be a really good player. Right near the top 10. And now you've got Davis. Once you got those two guys, you're really ahead of the game on everybody else, and you're starting to build and flesh out everything around them. The other nice thing is, let's say LeBron James does slow down and he really is kind of done in 3 or 4 years or so. Now you've got Davis as your bridge guy to whatever the next generation is, and that keeps you good and keeps you really in the running here to be a great team going forward. And lastly, it keeps them away from the Golden State Warriors, which is that's floated out there, and it's kind of around whether or not anybody wants to hear it or likes it or not. It's out there, and the Warriors pulled it off once already. So if you're looking at another reason to like that idea, do it. I know it's tough to give up on your own guys and your young kids. That's always hard to do. But when these kind of generational talents come along, you really got to do that. And I'm not sure I see anybody on the Lakers of their young group that has anywhere near the ability to be as good as Davis. And I'm not sure any two of them combined are as good as Davis. And it really doesn't even work like that anyway.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't. And I agree with you 100%. I think if you can get him, you do what you need to do and you go get him. Davis I hadn't actually heard that. Davis to the Warriors. So what would that be? Something like Draymond and a few pieces? Because Klay Thompson is going to be a free agent. So I'm assuming and same as Kevin Durant, I'm assuming they're not tossing Steph Curry into a deal. So how do you make that? Or would that be a deal at the trade deadline? They're saying
no. It's not. It's not a this year kind of thing. This would be a more in the summer kind of thing, or even not not next season, the season after, if Davis opts to be a free agent. And it's kind of looking at, okay, well, in that year, even if you re-sign Clay, well, Durant is presumably gone in this scenario. And then Andre Iguodala's salary comes off the books. Sean Livingston's off the books. You're really down to Curry, keeping around Draymond and Klay Thompson. And then you're really right back to where they were when they signed KD. It's you've got the three guys, add the fourth guy. And in this scenario, Davis would be the fourth guy. So there's been some written on it. It's kind of been one of those things that's been really summarily rejected as like that's the too much needs to happen there. And obviously if Kevin Durant resigns, well, that's out the window, right? Because he's just going to stay and that's your team going forward. So it's one of those things where I'm not exactly, monitoring it with bated breath. I'm just kind of, it could happen because, it happened before when everybody rejected it. And here we are with this, juggernaut roster that's put together that, even this year when they're down a little bit, you look at the standings and they're right back at the top of the West once again.
Yeah, it didn't take long for them to get right back. No. And you know what? You go back and you look. I know this is a little bit, sidetracked here, but you mentioned how many things have to happen in order for something like that to occur. Go back and look at how many things had to happen in order for Kevin Durant to land in Golden State. I mean, that is beyond belief that actually happened.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, and while we don't have a massive cap spike coming like we had before, we do have about in that summer where this would all go. Right now it's projected to be about a $7 million jump, $9 million jump coming projected in there, which that's generally enough to kind of take you over the top to get the guys you want. So it's, it's one of those things where, just keep an eye on it. And if it starts to happen, unlike last time around, and this is a plea that'll fall on deaf ears of like, why does the NBA allow this? Well, they're not doing anything illegal. It's just smart roster building, and here we go. So, we'll have to see, where it all comes down to. The difference this time around is they're not getting any sweetheart deals out of Draymond Green. He's not taking $1 less than what he can get. Yeah, and neither is Clay when he's a free agent this coming summer. So that makes it a little more difficult. But we'll see. And I want to be very clear because I've beat this drum for the Pelicans and their fans. Anthony Davis, and you mentioned it, unless he says no to the designated player veteran extension this summer, which is the so-called Supermax contract, unless he says no to that, there's no reason to even think about this or discuss this because he's not going anywhere. He's just going to stay right there in New Orleans. And to his credit, he continues to say, this is where I want to be. I want to win here. I want to, make this work with the Pelicans. So, I like to always add that in there because the poor Pelicans fans, they get, run through the ringer with this Davis stuff, especially from the team I cover, the Celtics fans who are, Anthony Davis, they like Anthony Davis, I think, as much as any actual Celtic on the team sometimes.
Well, and that's a little interesting thing there, a little factoid there as well, because the Celtics, as currently constructed right now, are prohibited from trading for Anthony Davis. It'll have to wait until Kyrie Irving's on a different deal, correct?
Yeah, so what it is because they both signed at the time it was a slightly different rule, but they were both Rose Rule guys. But now that in effect converts into these designated rookie extensions for both of them rather. So because they're on those contracts, you can't trade for two players on that type of contract. So Kyrie's on that contract now. He's got a player option at the end of the year. So if Kyrie opts out, which all indications are that he will, the minute he opts out, that contract is now over. He's a free agent, and it's in that restriction on trading for Anthony Davis is removed. But as long as Kyrie's on the Celtics roster, they cannot trade for Anthony Davis this season. No ifs, ands, or buts, no matter how nicely you ask Celtics fans. If for some reason you're listening to the Lakers podcast, you're not getting them.
Good to know. So until that happens, they can't make a move for him. Keith, one of the things that I wanted to talk about here today is what's been going on this NBA season so far, because to me, it's been a pretty enjoyable. I mean, obviously, hey, the Lakers have LeBron James, and it's more fun getting to cover a good team that's winning games, and you get to see a talent like LeBron James on a nightly basis and all of that. But, you look at what's happening in just the Western Conference. I mean, the East has broken down kind of the way we thought it would. The Raptors are better than anyone would have predicted, I think. But still, the East has kind of played out the way you think it would. But you look at the West. My goodness, I mean, the San Antonio Spurs and the Houston Rockets are right now the second and third worst team in the Western Conference. The Spurs are losing tons of games unless they're playing the Lakers, apparently. You've got the Sacramento Kings knocking on the door of a playoff spot. The Grizzlies right now would be in the playoffs. The Blazers would be in the playoffs. The Mavericks would be in the playoffs. The Jazz would not. It seems like it's complete chaos here in the Western Conference. And I got to tell you, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You know, one of those things too is it was Portland went on a little bit of a losing streak there the other day. Now they won 2 straight now, but they went from like the first and second best record in the conference all the way down to 7th in the span of about a week or a little over. So you lose a couple games in a row, and all of a sudden in the West or win a few games in a row, and all of a sudden your fortunes look drastically different. It's so packed in there. It's one of those things that's really interesting. It's the depth of the conference, because if you look at it across the board, the 8 playoff teams right now, they're not really all that drastically different from the 8 playoff teams in the East record wise. The top of the East is even, just as good, if not slightly better record wise than the top of the West. But then you're going all the way down to the Jazz, who are in the 11th slot right now, and they're a 500 team. The Pelicans are 1 under 500 as they're playing, this afternoon against the Pistons. And, it's really unbelievable to look at it. Now, I thought the Spurs, I thought this was one of those years, especially I purposely wait on making my season predictions until we're right on the eve of the season, because I never want to pick something and then have a guy go down for injury and be like, well, you're an idiot, and have it thrown in my face. Right. I am an idiot. Let's not be, I'm not saying I'm not, but it's one of those things. I don't want to hear that for the next, 6 months when it's like, well, I didn't know player X was going to get hurt. So I always wait. And it just felt like they passed the point of no return with injuries this year and with attrition on the roster. And I kind of look at it as them saying, hey, we only bottom out about once every decade and a half or so, once every 2 decades off of this run right now. One of my favorite stats is in franchise history, they've only missed the playoffs 4 times in their NBA history, 40 plus years. So in 2 of those years, one time they got David Robinson, the other time they got Tim Duncan. So I think the Spurs might say, if we miss it, it's not the end of the world. It might work out okay.
So you're telling me Zion is going to be a Spur then? Is that what you're saying here, Keith?
I like to believe the basketball gods reward those who do things the right way, and I think they might reward San Antonio once again. So they don't surprise me. But teams like the Rockets, Pelicans, Jazz, those are very big surprises to me. That they're still out of the playoffs, and there's still lots and lots of time for them to reverse it. And as we talked, it's so close that you're watching it. But the cool thing is, generally you don't kind of do standings watch until we're in maybe post trade deadline is when you might start looking, or post All-Star break. It's almost like you got to kind of watch the standings here, because otherwise you're going to wake up some morning and be like, wait, how are the Kings the 5th seed right now? And it's not out of the realm of possibility. So it's been a lot of fun, as you put it, to watch this all year long so far.
Yeah, it definitely has been. I mean, like you said, lose a few games, win a few games, you can go up or down the standings very, very quickly right now. It'll level out a little bit as the season goes on, but it's just amazing how deep the West is. I mean, you look at, if you're playing a Western Conference opponent, unless it's the Phoenix Suns, you're in for a tough night. It's not going to be an easy win, whereas you look out east, you've got teams like the Bulls, you've got the Hawks, you've got the Cavs, although the Hawks and Cavs have both won their last games. You've got the Knicks, you've got even the Nets, and the man, what is going on with the Washington Wizards? That whole thing, that's just an absolute mess. So you've got all these other teams in the East that these Eastern Conference squads can kind of beat up on. In the West, that just doesn't exist. There is no night where you can be off.
No, there isn't. And even with the Suns, I mean, they're 4-22. They've lost 8 in a row, but you still have to combat the fact that once he's healthy and playing again, Devin Booker could go for 50 and ruin your night. Mm-hmm. They've got those guys where those other teams in the East you mentioned, I don't know. Now, what's funny about the East is, if you told me that the standings, the eight playoff teams are those 8 playoff teams at the end of the year right now in some order, maybe a little, fluctuation in the order, I would say, okay, that makes sense to me. I have no issue with that. Nothing, crazy there. Yeah, it's crazy to think Washington's out, but how their season's gone, man, no, that's not a surprise. But in the West, I would say you can't tell me that today. I don't even think you could tell me who the top 10, 11, 12 teams are in the West right now in any semblance of order, because they're just going to continue to change and tweak and go up and down as we go. Now, the one nice thing is, when they come East, I don't care, teams always say this is the West beats up on the East, and that is true to some extent. But this year, it's always a little hard to win on the road. But this year, teams coming East, they're just going to look at it. And if you can get one of those road trips where you might have a Cleveland, Atlanta, Chicago, triad, I guess, or whatever you're looking for in there, you're probably looking at that and saying, well, at a bare minimum, we're coming out 2-1, and that's if we rest everybody and bring up half our G League team, which is obviously not possible, but you know what I mean. If you're just saying, sit everybody, we're going to roll right through this thing, because that's just how bad the bottom of the East is right now. And on the flip side, you could say other than the Suns, that those teams just got a leg up on tanking on people.
Yeah, that's very true as well. And I look at this. I look at the Western Conference table, and I mean, you look at how close everything is. That makes me think that there's going to be more franchises emboldened by the fact that they're still really in it and have a puncher's chance, and they may try to make a move to go grab somebody before the trade deadline. I think we could see that take place here. So I think we could see some teams be more aggressive because it is so close, and it's not the runaway for the Golden State Warriors that we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I think you're right. When you talk about it, I think there are a couple teams who think, hey, if we can catch the Warriors on the right time, and maybe there's an injury or something, we can beat these guys. Houston almost did it, and Houston gave a blueprint to get there. Now, not everybody has James Harden and Chris Paul, so that's going to be really hard, to pull off. But then beyond that, beyond the fact of I think we could beat the Warriors, when you look at it, you have teams like the Denver Nuggets, haven't been to the playoffs in a long time. Of course, they want to be there. The Lakers, they haven't been in a while, and you don't want to miss the playoffs when you have LeBron. The Clippers and Grizzlies, it was a one-year blip for them, but neither one of those teams is the kind that are going to sit back. And then as you get further down, Dallas, Sacramento, it's been a while since they've been playoff teams. They would love to get back into the postseason, especially with such young rosters. They'd love to give those guys that experience. Minnesota, Tibbs might still be coaching for his job at this point. Utah, high expectations. New Orleans, well, of course, if you want to keep Davis in town, you got to keep winning. And then the Spurs and the Rockets are the Spurs and the Rockets. So everybody in the West has something to play for. Whether or not they can make it, that's going to be the question. Because obviously they can't all make it. So you're going to have a handful of disappointed teams, and of course, someone's going to suffer some catastrophic injury. As much as it sucks to say that, we know that's going to happen. That ruins someone's season, because it always does. But it's just going to be one of those things where we're just going to have to, like I said, you're going to have to watch this night in, night out. As an East Coaster, it makes it really fun for me, because I'm not slogging through these awful, 10:30 Eastern starts that end at 1 a.m. my time. And it's just like, oh, great, it's the Kings and the Lakers tonight, and they both stink, and it's, mid-March, and they really have nothing to play for. Like, though, trust me, those were some rough watches late at night.
Oh, yeah. Now you have something to actually keep you awake instead of something that's going to put you to sleep.
That's it.
All right. Well, Keith, you know what? We covered a ton here. I think my voice has probably taken us about as far as it can at this point. Hey, thanks so much for coming on here and going over all this stuff with us, from the contract details to trades to everything going on in the playoff race as early as it is. Amazing that we can already talk about the playoff race. Thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. I, love, getting on with you, and, when we can talk about things that are going on with the Lakers and, then the league as a whole, it's, always a good time. So, once again, thanks for having me.
Guys, make sure you go follow Keith on Twitter at KeithSmithNBA. You can find his work at Yahoo Real GM and Celtics blog. And of course, go check out the NBA Front Office podcast, which Keith hosts, and it goes over all kinds of excellent information like he gave us today. So, again, thank you everybody for listening. Apologies for my voice. Hopefully it doesn't sound too terrible, but I got it out, made it through the show. Make sure you guys head over to LakersNation.com, your home for everything Lakers, and keep checking on the Lakers Nation Facebook page. We'll be doing our Lakers Nation post-game shows after every game, hoping to start that up again with the next matchup against the Miami Heat. All right, guys, my name's Trevor Lane. You can follow me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane. Till next time, see ya.